No one's coming to your party. Grow up. My mother texted on my 34th birthday, and something inside me that had been bending for 20 years finally snapped clean in half. I stood in my Chicago apartment, staring at those words glowing on my phone screen. Around me, birthday balloons bobbed like silent witnesses to what I was about to become. The dining table held enough food for 15 people. My parents, my brother Jake, my aunts and uncles, who always said they'd try to make it, but never did. The family group chat showed 43 people online, 43 relatives who'd seen my invitation weeks ago. The only response was Mom's public dismissal, and now my phone sat quiet as a funeral. I typed back, "Understood," because that's what good daughters do. We understand, we accept, we make it easy for everyone else. Then I did something I'd never done in my adult life. I opened my banking app and canceled the automatic payment to my parents' apartment, all $2,300 of it. My finger hovered over the confirmation button for exactly 3 seconds before I pressed it. The rush felt like the first breath after nearly drowning. But that small act of rebellion was nothing compared to what I was about to discover. 20 years of being the family's safety net, the reliable one, the daughter who always showed up, and I was about to learn it had all been built on a foundation of lies, so elaborate, so carefully constructed, that when the truth finally surfaced, it would shatter everything I thought I knew about the people I called family. Some birthdays give you cake and candles. This one was about to give me something far more valuable, the truth about who I really was when I stopped being who everyone else needed me to be. The silence stretched through my apartment like spilled wine, staining everything it touched. 20 minutes passed before the first family member left the group chat. Then another. By midnight, the digital exodus was complete. 43 people vanishing into the night rather than acknowledge what had just happened. Growing up, birthdays meant something in our house. Dad would wake up early to make his famous blueberry pancakes, Mom would hang streamers while humming off-key, and Jake would present me with drawings he'd made in crayon, stick figures of our family holding hands under a crooked sun. Those memories felt like artifacts from someone else's life now. The transformation began slowly, the way most devastations do. Dad's heart attack when I was 19 changed everything overnight. Suddenly, Mom couldn't work. Too overwhelmed with grief, she said. Jake dropped out of community college to support the family, which apparently meant playing video games while I picked up extra shifts at the campus bookstore. The adults in my life became children, and the child became the adult. College loans stretched to cover their groceries. My part-time job became full-time, then overtime, then a career I stumbled into because someone had to pay the bills. Every promotion came with new family emergencies. Mom's car breaking down the week after my raise. Jake's business opportunities that required startup funds. Medical expenses that seemed to multiply like rabbits. But birthdays were supposed to be sacred. Even as everything else shifted, I'd held on to that tradition, planning celebrations that brought everyone together, creating photo albums full of smiling faces around restaurant tables and living room gatherings. Looking back now, those pictures told a different story. Everyone was smiling at the camera, but no one was looking at me. The apartment felt smaller now, crowded with evidence of my own foolishness. Gift bags lined up on the kitchen counter, each one carefully chosen for family members who weren't coming. A birthday cake from the bakery downtown with "Happy Birthday, Sarah" written in purple frosting, my favorite color, though I couldn't remember the last time anyone had asked what my favorite anything was. Sleep came in fragments that night, broken by the phantom buzz of text notifications that never arrived. Morning light filtered through the blinds, painting everything gray and unfamiliar. The decorations looked like remnants of someone else's party, someone else's life. That's when muscle memory kicked in. Every Tuesday for the past 3 years, I'd driven to their neighborhood to check on things, groceries, bills, whatever crisis needed managing. Today felt different, though. Today, the 20-minute drive felt like traveling to a foreign country where I'd once been fluent in the language but had somehow forgotten how to speak. Their duplex sat on Maple Street like a postcard from my former life. Mom's garden bloomed with flowers I'd helped plant. The mailbox bore the address I'd memorized by heart. And there in the driveway sat my Honda Civic, the car I'd been making payments on for 3 years but had never actually driven home. Walking up their front steps felt like approaching the edge of a cliff. Through the window, I could see them at the kitchen table, sharing coffee and what looked like leftover birthday cake. Not my birthday cake, a different one entirely, store-bought and simple, like they'd celebrated something without me. But it was the envelope on their counter that stopped my heart cold. Official-looking, with a return address I recognized from my own mail. The envelope was addressed to them, but the name in the corner belonged to my mortgage company. The doorbell's chime shattered their quiet morning like glass hitting pavement. Through the window, Mom's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips, while Dad's newspaper crumpled in his suddenly tense grip. They exchanged a look, quick, guilty, loaded with meaning that excluded me entirely. "Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad." The words came out steadier than expected, though my heart hammered against my ribs like a caged bird. Beautiful morning, isn't it? Mom's smile appeared too quickly, too bright. "Sweetheart, what a lovely surprise. We weren't expecting—" "The car?" came my interruption, gentle but firm. "I'm here for my car." Dad's face shifted through several expressions before settling on confused concern. "Your car? Honey, you take the train everywhere. You don't even like driving in the city." The envelope on their counter seemed to pulse with significance, but neither of them moved to explain it. Instead, Mom launched into a performance worthy of community theater, wringing her hands and speaking about insurance complications and temporary arrangements that had somehow become permanent. Within an hour, their damage control campaign began in earnest. Cousin Margaret called first, her voice heavy with manufactured concern. "Your mother's worried sick about you. She says you're going through some kind of breakdown. Financial stress can really mess with people's minds." Then Aunt Linda, "Maybe you should talk to someone, dear. Your mom mentioned you've been making some impulsive decisions lately." Uncle Robert's message came via text. "Your parents are good people. Don't let pride destroy your family." Each call felt like another stone added to an invisible weight pressing down on my chest. They'd crafted a narrative so quickly, so efficiently, that by lunchtime, the entire extended family believed I'd lost my mind over money troubles. The speed of their response suggested practice, like they'd rehearsed the scenario in their heads, waiting for the day I'd finally push back. Jake's arrival that evening brought the cruelest twist yet. He knocked softly, the way he used to when we were kids and he'd had a nightmare. Behind him stood Grandma Rose, her silver hair perfectly styled, her favorite lavender cardigan draped over her shoulders. "Grandma," the word came out smaller than intended. Her blue eyes, usually sharp as winter sky, looked clouded with confusion. "Sarah, honey, why won't you help your parents anymore? Jake says you've stopped caring about family." The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Rose had been my anchor through every family storm, the one person who'd never asked for anything, never made me feel guilty for existing. Now Jake had weaponized even that sacred relationship, feeding her carefully curated lies about my supposed selfishness. "I would never abandon family, Grandma. You know that." "Then why did you take their car? Jake says they can't even buy groceries now." Jake stood behind her, his expression a masterpiece of false sorrow mixed with righteous indignation. But something flickered in his eyes, a moment of satisfaction so brief it might have been imagined. "Sarah," he said, his voice dripping with performed patience, "we need to talk about your behavior lately. Maybe you should come stay with Mom and Dad for a while, until you're feeling more like yourself." Rose nodded eagerly, her concern genuine, even if its foundation was built on lies. "That sounds wonderful, dear. Family should stick together during difficult times." But as Jake helped Grandma back to his car, she turned and pressed something small and metallic into my palm. Her grip lingered longer than necessary, and when she spoke, her voice carried a different quality, clearer, more focused. "Sometimes," she whispered, "the truth lives in the places people think you'll never look." The small metal object in my palm turned out to be a key, brass, worn smooth by decades of use, with a number etched into its surface, 247. Rose's whispered words echoed through sleepless hours as the family's coordinated assault intensified around me like a gathering storm. Social media became their battlefield of choice. Cousin Margaret posted a tearful video about family loyalty and children who forget their roots, tagging half our relatives in emotional manipulation disguised as concern. The comments section filled with virtual head shaking and digital disappointment, each response feeling like another nail in my reputation's coffin. Work became my only sanctuary, until even that refuge crumbled. Linda from HR pulled me aside during lunch, her expression carefully neutral as she mentioned some concerning calls about my mental state. Multiple someones, had contacted my office claiming to be worried family members, painting pictures of erratic behavior and financial instability that could jeopardize my security clearance. "Of course, we don't give these things much weight," Linda assured me, though her eyes suggested otherwise. "But maybe consider taking some personal time, just until things settle down." The isolation grew thicker each day. Friends stopped calling after receiving carefully worded warnings about my breakdown. Neighbors avoided eye contact in the hallway. Even my favorite coffee shop barista seemed to handle my order with suspicious caution, as if mental instability might be contagious. Jake's visits became a regular torment, always arriving with witnesses, former teachers, family friends, anyone whose opinion might carry weight in our small community. Each performance followed the same script: concerned brother checking on unstable sister, documenting my deteriorating condition with the dedication of a court reporter. "She's been talking about Dad a lot lately," he'd say, his voice heavy with manufactured worry. "Almost like she thinks he's still alive. It's really concerning." The accusations grew bolder with each telling: missing family heirlooms allegedly stolen for drug money, late-night phone calls where I'd supposedly threatened self-harm, financial documents I'd allegedly destroyed to hide my gambling debts. Each lie built upon the last until the fiction became more believable than any truth I could offer. But the cruelest blow came through Mom's phone call 3 days later, her voice trembling with practiced devastation. "Your Grandma Rose is asking for you, sweetheart. She's having one of her confused spells, and she keeps saying you promised to visit." The care facility smelled like industrial disinfectant, trying unsuccessfully to mask the scent of sadness. Rose sat by her window, staring at a garden she couldn't see clearly anymore, her hands folded like delicate birds in her lap. "Hi, Grandma." The words caught in my throat. When she turned, her eyes held that cloudy confusion Jake had weaponized so effectively. "Sarah, but they said you weren't coming anymore. They said you were too busy for old ladies like me." "Who said that, Grandma?" Your mother. She comes every day now, you know. Brings me cookies and tells me stories about how you've changed, how success has made you different." Her voice cracked on the word like ancient paper. "She says you don't want to be part of the family anymore." The systematic destruction of every relationship that mattered felt complete in that moment. They'd even stolen my grandmother's faith in me, replacing love with doubt, one carefully planted lie at a time. Rose reached for my hand with fingers that felt fragile as autumn leaves. "But you're here now," she whispered. "That's what matters." "Grandma, about that key you gave me?" Her grip tightened suddenly, and for just an instant, her eyes cleared like clouds parting. "Storage unit on 5th Street, she said, her voice sharp with urgency. "Everything your father wanted you to know, everything they thought they'd hidden." Then confusion returned like a curtain falling, and she was asking me about the weather, about whether I'd seen any good movies lately, as if the previous moment had never happened. Walking back to my car, the weight of isolation pressed down like summer humidity. Every family gathering, every shared memory, every foundation of trust had been systematically demolished. They'd turned me into a stranger in my own life. But as the evening news played through my apartment silence, a familiar face appeared on screen that made my blood freeze. The reporter's voice seemed to come from underwater. Local businessman Jake Mitchell was arrested today in connection with an identity theft ring that authorities say has been operating for over 5 years. The news anchor's voice continued as Jake's mugshot filled the screen, but the words seemed to dissolve into white noise. Identity theft ring, 5 years, multiple victims. The remote slipped from numb fingers as the report detailed a sophisticated operation targeting deceased individuals whose families had never thought to monitor their credit. 5th Street storage sprawled like a concrete maze under fluorescent lights that hummed with electrical desperation. Unit 247 sat tucked between abandoned furniture and Christmas decorations that would never see another holiday. Rose's key turned with surprising ease, as if the lock had been waiting patiently for this moment. Inside, cardboard boxes lined the walls like silent sentinels, each one labeled in Dad's careful handwriting. Tax records, 2019-2023. Insurance claims, review. Family financial history, for Sarah only. The air smelled like old paper and secrets that had been fermenting in darkness for too long. The first box revealed Dad's true financial records, not the sanitized versions Mom had shown me over the years, but meticulous documentation of every dollar, every transaction, every discrepancy that had troubled him before his death. Bank statements showed massive cash withdrawals in the months before his heart attack, all coinciding with Jake's supposed job interviews and Mom's mysterious doctor appointments. But it was the second box that shattered everything. Insurance documents revealed Dad had purchased a substantial life insurance policy just months before his death, a policy that should have left the family financially secure for decades. The beneficiary page made my hands shake. Sarah Mitchell, primary; Linda Mitchell, secondary, only if primary beneficiary is deceased or incapacitated. Mom had been lying about their financial struggles for 15 years. The third box contained something that made the room spin around me like a carnival ride gone wrong. Credit reports dating back to Dad's death showed new accounts opened in his name week after week, month after month. Cards, loans, mortgages on properties that didn't exist. Jake's signature was visible on some documents, but others bore Mom's careful forgery of Dad's handwriting. They'd been using his identity as their personal bank since the day he died. Hidden beneath layers of financial evidence lay a manila folder marked audio recordings, private. Dad's voice emerged from an old tape recorder like a ghost reaching across time. If Sarah is hearing this, then something has happened to me, and I need her to know the truth about what's been going on in this house. His recorded words painted a picture of discovery and growing horror. Mom's secret gambling addiction that had consumed their savings. Jake's drug debts that brought dangerous people to their door. Dad's desperate attempts to protect me from a family that saw me as their eternal safety net rather than their daughter. They've been planning this for months, Dad's voice continued, steady despite the exhaustion threading through each word, using my illness as cover, making sure Sarah feels responsible for everyone's future. Linda's been forging my signature on documents I've never seen. Jake's been stealing mail, intercepting bank statements. They think I don't know, but I've been watching, documenting everything. The final revelation came through a letter addressed to me in Dad's handwriting, dated just days before his death. The heart attack wasn't sudden, sweetheart. The stress of discovering what they'd been doing, what they planned to do to you, my body just couldn't handle carrying their secrets anymore. The most devastating evidence lay at the bottom of the box. A death certificate that didn't match the story they'd told me. Dad hadn't died at home in his sleep, as Mom claimed. He died at the hospital, alone, after calling 911 himself. The medical records showed he'd been conscious for hours, asking for me repeatedly, while Mom and Jake were mysteriously unreachable. They'd let him die alone, rather than risk me learning the truth. Rose's voice echoed from the storage unit's doorway, clear as mountain spring water. He made me promise to give you that key when you were finally ready to stop being their victim and start being his daughter. Turning around slowly, expecting to find her confused and lost, instead, she stood there with eyes sharp as winter starlight, holding a smartphone with 911 already dialed. "Now," she said, her thumb hovering over the call button, "shall we discuss what really happened the night your father died?" Rose's finger pressed the call button with the decisive click of a chess piece claiming checkmate. "Yes, this is Rose Chen. My granddaughter and I need to report a case of identity theft and insurance fraud spanning 15 years. We have extensive documentation." The storage unit became our war room as evidence boxes transformed into ammunition against decades of deception. Rose moved with surprising agility for someone supposedly lost in dementia's fog, organizing documents with the precision of a seasoned attorney. Her clarity felt like watching the sun burn through morning mist. "The confused grandmother act?" She smiled grimly while sorting bank statements. "Your father taught me that. Sometimes people reveal more when they think you can't understand what they're saying. Amazing how many family secrets get discussed right in front of the senile old lady." Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer like approaching thunder. Rose had requested Detective Maria Santos, someone she apparently knew from her volunteer work with elder abuse cases. The irony wasn't lost. She'd been preparing for this moment while everyone believed she was fading away. "Your mother visited me yesterday," Rose continued, her voice carrying bitter satisfaction. "Told me all about their new plan to have you declared mentally incompetent so they could access your inheritance directly. Apparently, the identity theft arrests spooked them into accelerating their timeline." The detective arrived with backup, her dark hair pulled severely back and eyes that missed nothing. Santos listened without interruption as Rose presented evidence with the methodical precision of someone who'd been building a case for years. Financial documents, recorded conversations, forged signatures, each piece of proof landed like a physical blow against the fiction they'd constructed. "Ma'am," Santos addressed Rose with obvious respect. "This level of documentation suggests extensive premeditation. How long have you been collecting this evidence?" "Since the day my son-in-law died," Rose replied simply. "Robert called me that night,
told me what he'd discovered about Linda and Jake's schemes. Said he was going to confront them in the morning, make them return every stolen penny. But morning never came for him.
The implication hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had been burning for 15 years. Santos made careful notes while Rose continued her methodical destruction of the family's carefully crafted mythology. Robert documented everything because he knew they'd never stop. The gambling, the drug debts, the forged documents, it was all escalating. He was terrified they'd eventually destroy Sarah completely, use her up until there was nothing left but debt and broken dreams. Phone calls began immediately. Santos contacted the fraud division, while Rose called our family members one by one, her voice carrying newfound authority as she informed them about the arrests, the evidence, the systematic lies they'd all been fed about my supposed mental breakdown. Cousin Margaret's shocked silence stretched across the phone line when Rose calmly explained how Mom and Jake had manipulated every family conversation, every social media post, every carefully orchestrated campaign to isolate me from support systems. Uncle Robert's stammered apologies came through the speaker as Rose detailed the fraudulent emergency calls to my workplace. "The wedding is tomorrow," Rose announced suddenly, making Santos look up from her notes. "Jake's been out on bail, and they're still planning to go through with the ceremony. Linda thinks the marriage will provide legal protection somehow, make it harder to prosecute him." The wedding, a detail that had felt irrelevant in light of the arrests, suddenly crystallized into the perfect opportunity for public reckoning. 300 guests, including extended family who'd participated in my character assassination. A celebration funded entirely with stolen money and built on lies that were about to crumble under the weight of truth. Santos handed over business cards and evidence receipts while Rose packed Dad's documents back into their boxes. The storage unit felt lighter somehow, as if secrets had physical weight that was finally being lifted. "Your grandmother is quite remarkable," Santos observed. "Most people her age wouldn't have the stamina for this kind of investigation." Rose's laughter carried genuine amusement. "Detective, when someone steals your family's future and breaks your granddaughter's heart, you find stamina you didn't know existed. Love makes warriors out of the most unexpected people." The drive home passed in contemplative silence, both of us processing the magnitude of what had just been set in motion. Tomorrow would bring arrests, public humiliation, and the spectacular collapse of 15 years of carefully maintained lies. But as we pulled into Rose's driveway, she turned with eyes that held one final secret. "There's something else, dear. Something I haven't told the police yet because I wanted you to decide how to use it." From her purse, she withdrew a small digital recorder, the kind used for medical appointments. "Your mother called me an hour before we went to the storage unit. She was drunk, celebrating Jake's bail, and she said some very interesting things about the night your father died." The recorder sat between us like a loaded weapon, containing words that could transform everything from fraud to something far more serious. "Sarah," Rose said softly, "your mother confessed to switching your father's heart medication the night he confronted them. She thought I was too confused to understand what she was telling me." Rose's finger hovered over the recorder's play button, like a conductor preparing for the final movement of a symphony that had been building for 15 years. "Are you ready to hear this, sweetheart? Once we listen, there's no going back to the family you thought you knew." Mom's voice emerged from the tiny speaker, slurred with wine and bitter triumph. "You know what the funny part is, Rose? Robert thought he was so smart, documenting everything, threatening to expose us, but he forgot about his heart medication sitting right there on the kitchen counter.
Amazing how similar those little white pills look when you're having a cardiac episode and can't see straight. The confession continued in gruesome detail. How Mom had switched Dad's heart medication with Jake's anxiety pills the night he confronted them about the fraud. How she'd watched him struggle with chest pains for hours, telling him it was just stress, that his medication would kick in soon. How she'd convinced Jake to drive to the casino that night, establishing their alibi while Dad fought for his life alone. He kept calling for Sarah, Mom's recorded voice continued with chilling detachment. Even at the end, he was more worried about protecting her than saving himself. Pathetic, really. All that fuss over money that was going to be ours anyway through inheritance. Rose's hand trembled as she stopped the recording. The silence stretched between us like a chasm that could never be bridged. Dad hadn't died from stress or overwork or natural causes. He'd been murdered by the woman who'd promised to love him in sickness and health. Detective Santos needs to hear this immediately, Rose said, reaching for her phone. But before she could dial, headlights swept across her driveway, illuminating figures approaching through the darkness. Jake stood at the front door, no longer the concerned brother or manipulative schemer, but something far more dangerous. Behind him, Mom clutched a bottle that clearly wasn't her first of the evening, her face twisted with rage that had been simmering beneath the surface for years. "Open the door, Rose," Jake called, his voice carrying an edge that raised every instinct for survival. "We know Sarah's in there. Time for a family meeting." Through the window, Mom's voice carried clearly. "That recording you think you're so clever about? Jake saw you at the storage unit today. We know exactly what you found and exactly what you think you're going to do about it." Rose moved with surprising speed, pressing the recording into my hands while simultaneously activating an app on her phone. "Emergency alert," she whispered, "goes directly to Detective Santos, but we need to keep them talking until help arrives." The front door rattled under Jake's increasingly violent knocking. "We're not going anywhere, Sarah. You've destroyed everything. My wedding, my future, our family's reputation. But you forgot something important. You're all alone in there with a senile old lady who everyone knows makes up stories." Mom's laughter sounded like breaking glass. "Even if you did call the police, who's going to believe a confused grandmother and her mentally unstable granddaughter? We've spent months establishing your credibility problems, remember?" Their voices grew bolder, more detailed, as they discussed their contingency plan through the door, how they'd claim Rose had fallen down the stairs in her confusion, how they'd paint my presence there as evidence of elder abuse, turning me into the villain even in death, how the recording would disappear, just another tragic accident in a family already torn apart by financial disputes. "Robert was so much easier," Mom continued, her inhibitions completely dissolved by alcohol and desperation. "Just switched a few pills and let nature take its course. But you two have been far more trouble than you're worth." Jake's voice joined hers in planning our demise with the casual efficiency of people who'd crossed this line before. They discussed staging a murder-suicide, making it look like my guilt over financial crimes had driven me to violence against the grandmother who'd tried to stop me. Every detail fell into place with sickening precision. But their confessions were being recorded by Rose's phone, automatically uploaded to cloud storage that would survive even if we didn't. Detective Santos would have everything she needed to ensure justice, regardless of what happened in the next few minutes. The back door exploded inward as Jake abandoned subtlety for brute force. Mom stumbled through behind him, her eyes wild with the kind of desperation that made people capable of anything.
Between them, they carried the rope and cleaning supplies that would complete their narrative of tragic family violence. Rose stood slowly, her posture transforming from frail elderly woman to something fierce and unbreakable. "Hello, Linda. Hello, Jake. Perfect timing. We were just discussing your father's murder." The word murder hung in the air like a blade. Jake's confident expression flickered as he realized how much we actually knew. Mom's bottle slipped from her fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor like their carefully constructed world. But it was Rose's next words that turned their blood to ice. "Smile for the camera, dears. Detective Santos and her team have been watching this whole conversation through my security system. Say hello to your audience." The red recording light blinked steadily from the corner of the room, broadcasting their confessions live to police headquarters, where warrants were already being prepared and backup units dispatched. Jake's hand moved towards something metallic in his jacket pocket as sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer with each passing second. Jake's hand froze halfway to his jacket as Detective Santos burst through the front door with 3 uniformed officers, their weapons drawn and voices commanding immediate compliance. The metallic object turned out to be nothing more threatening than car keys, but the terror in his eyes revealed how close desperation had brought him to crossing an even darker line. "Linda Mitchell, Jake Mitchell, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and identity theft," Santos announced, her voice cutting through Mom's wine-soaked protests with surgical precision. The Miranda rights echoed through Rose's living room like a prayer finally being answered after 15 years of silence. Mom's breakdown was immediate and complete. Years of carefully maintained facades crumbled as she sobbed about stress and impossible circumstances, about how Dad's discovery of their crimes had left them no choice but to protect themselves. Her tears seemed genuine until she looked directly at me and snarled, "This is all your fault. If you'd just minded your own business and kept sending money like a good daughter, none of this would have happened." Even in handcuffs, even facing murder charges, she couldn't accept responsibility for the destruction she'd orchestrated. Jake remained silent, his lawyer training apparently kicking in too late to save him from the recorded confessions that had sealed their fate. The wedding that was supposed to happen tomorrow would now feature empty chairs and scandal instead of celebration. Rose's transformation from confused grandmother to star witness captivated the officers taking her statement. Her memory proved razor-sharp as she detailed years of documented abuse, providing timestamps and evidence locations with the precision of someone who'd been preparing for this moment since Dad's funeral. The detective treated her with the respect of one professional acknowledging another's expertise. The house felt different once the police cars disappeared into the night, their red and blue lights fading like bruises healing in reverse. Rose moved through her kitchen with renewed energy, making tea as if we'd just survived a natural disaster rather than a family apocalypse. The normalcy of the gesture, sugar cubes, delicate china cups, the ritual of hospitality, provided an anchor in the chaos. "Your father would be so proud of you," she said, settling into her favorite armchair with the satisfaction of someone who'd finally completed a promise. "He worried constantly about leaving you vulnerable to their manipulation, made me swear I'd protect you if something happened to him, but I never imagined it would take this long for you to be ready to hear the truth." Sleep came in waves that night, exhaustion battling with adrenaline as the magnitude of everything processed through dreams and fragmented waking moments. Morning brought Detective Santos with updates that felt like gifts wrapped in justice. Mom's confession had led to evidence of Dad's murder.
Jake's gambling debts connected him to organized crime figures who were eager to cooperate with authorities, and the insurance company was already processing claims to return the money that should have been mine 15 years ago. The extended family's response proved as predictable as sunrise. Cousin Margaret deleted her social media posts and claimed she'd always suspected something wasn't right. Uncle Robert sent flowers with a card that read, "Family means supporting each other through truth, not lies." Aunt Linda called to volunteer as a character witness, conveniently forgetting her role in spreading the rumors that had nearly destroyed my reputation. Work welcomed me back with the kind of awkward enthusiasm reserved for someone who'd been vindicated dramatically and publicly. Linda from HR actually apologized, explaining that the company's investigation into the fraudulent calls had revealed a pattern of family manipulation that extended far beyond what anyone had initially suspected. The promotion I'd been afraid to lose was not only secure, but came with a raise that reflected their embarrassment over having doubted me. But the real healing began in smaller moments. Rose teaching me Dad's recipe for blueberry pancakes, sharing stories about his childhood that painted pictures of the man I'd lost too soon. Going through photo albums and discovering that his love for me showed in every picture, not in grand gestures, but in the way his eyes always found me first, the way his hand always rested protectively on my shoulder. 3 months later, the life insurance settlement arrived with interest that had compounded for 15 years. The amount was staggering, enough to buy a house, travel the world, or simply breathe without financial anxiety for the first time in my adult life. But the real gift wasn't the money. It was the letter from the insurance company acknowledging that justice had finally been served. Rose insisted on celebrating with a small dinner party, just the two of us and Detective Santos, who'd become an unexpected friend through the legal proceedings. We raised glasses of Dad's favorite wine and toasted, not to revenge or bitterness, but to truth and the courage it takes to claim your own life back from people who never deserved to control it. The courtroom proceedings unfolded with the grim efficiency of justice long delayed. Mom received 25 years to life for murder in the first degree. Jake's cooperation with authorities earned him a reduced sentence of 15 years for fraud and conspiracy. Their lawyers argued for sympathy, painting pictures of desperate people driven to extremes by circumstances beyond their control. Standing at the victim impact statement podium, looking at the woman who'd given birth to me and then systematically destroyed every foundation of trust a family should provide, the words came without bitterness or rage, just simple, devastating truth. Your Honor, they didn't just steal money or commit fraud. They murdered my father and spent 15 years murdering my spirit, piece by piece, making me question my worth, my sanity, my right to exist without serving their needs. But they forgot something important. Love doesn't die when people betray it. It transforms into something stronger, the courage to choose yourself when no one else will. 1 year later, the apartment overlooking Lake Michigan feels like home in ways the old place never did. Sunlight streams through windows that frame a view earned rather than inherited, purchased with money that carries Dad's love instead of guilt's heavy weight. The walls hold photographs of chosen family, Rose, Detective Santos, co-workers who became friends when the truth emerged, and new faces who know my story and love me anyway. Birthday parties look different now. 5 genuine friends gather around a table where laughter comes easily and no one checks their phone for escape routes. The cake is store-bought because perfection matters less than presents, and every person here chose to celebrate rather than feeling obligated to attend. Rose sits at the head of the table, her mind sharp as ever, regaling everyone with stories that make Dad feel alive in the room. Work has evolved into purpose rather than survival. The promotion became a stepping stone to a new position helping families navigate financial fraud cases. Turns out there's considerable demand for someone who understands manipulation from the inside out. Each client who walks through the door carries familiar wounds, and healing happens in both directions when recognition sparks between survivor and survivor. The memorial garden planted in Dad's honor blooms outside Rose's kitchen window, where she can tend it while sharing stories with neighbors who've become surrogate family. His favorite roses climb a trellis that catches morning light, and sometimes birds nest there, small, perfect symbols of life continuing despite loss. Last week brought an unexpected test when a coworker asked for a small loan to cover emergency car repairs. The old version would have opened her wallet immediately, desperate to prove worthiness through usefulness. Instead, the words came naturally. "I care about you too much to enable poor financial decisions. How about we grab coffee and talk through some budgeting options instead?" Love without conditions feels revolutionary after a lifetime of earning affection through service. Rose demonstrates this daily, bringing soup when illness strikes, celebrating promotions without expecting repayment, offering advice that serves my interests rather than hers. This is what family was supposed to feel like all along. The most important lesson lives in this truth. You are not responsible for other people's choices, but you are responsible for your own boundaries. If you're reading this and recognizing yourself as the family ATM, ask yourself when someone last showed up for you without needing something first. Your worth isn't measured by your usefulness. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people face the consequences of their own actions. What would your life look like if you stopped proving your value and started knowing it?